He was wearing a $40 hoodie, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. To the crew of Regal Atlantic Flight 902, he looked like a mistake, a glitch in their perfectly curated first-class cabin. They saw a nobody. They saw someone who didn't belong. So they decided to treat him like trash. They denied him water. They threatened him with arrest. They humiliated him in front of 300 people. But what the chief stewardess, Patricia, didn't know was that the man in seat wasn't just a passenger. He was David Holloway. And 20 minutes ago, his signature on a digital contract made him the new owner of the entire airline. This isn't just a story about bad service. This is a story about the most brutal, instantaneous, and legally binding karma in aviation history. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a turbulent ride. The rain at Chicago O'Hare was relentless, lashing against the floor-to-ceiling glass of Terminal 5 like handfuls of gravel. Inside the terminal, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the frantic energy of delayed travelers. David Holloway leaned against a concrete pillar near Gate M12, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. The merger had been a war, a grueling 6-month battle of attrition between his tech conglomerate Sentient Systems and the failing legacy carrier Regal Atlantic Airways. The deal had closed privately at 4:00 a.m. in a boardroom in downtown Chicago. No press release, no fanfare. Just a digital handshake that transferred 51% of the controlling stock into David's portfolio. He wasn't flying private today. His Gulfstream was grounded in Teterboro for maintenance. And honestly, David didn't care. He just wanted to get to London to sign the physical papers at the UK headquarters. He wanted a seat that laid flat a glass of bourbon and silence. He looked down at his attire. He was wearing his coding uniform, a charcoal grey hoodie from a university gift shop, loose-fitting denim, and a pair of New Balance sneakers that had seen better years. To the casual observer, he looked like a tired graduate student, or perhaps an off-duty mechanic. He certainly didn't look like a man worth $12 billion. Regal Atlantic Flight 902 to London Heathrow is now boarding Group 1. The gate agent announced, her voice crackling over the PA system. First class and Diamond Medallion members only. David pulled his backpack over one shoulder and joined the queue. There were only 4 other people in the first-class line, 3 men in sharp, bespoke Italian suits and a woman dripping in Louis Vuitton. They all held their boarding passes with a practiced arrogance. As David stepped up to the podium, the man behind him, a heavy-set guy with a thick gold watch, let's call him Robert E. Thorne. No, wait. Thorne is banned. Let's go with Robert P. Vance. No, Vance is banned. Let's call him Robert P. Harrington. Robert cleared his throat loudly, leaning close to David's ear. Excuse me, son. This is Group 1. Economy is boarding in 20 minutes. Zone 4 is that way. He pointed a manicured finger toward the crowded general seating area. David didn't turn around. He just kept his eyes on the gate agent. I know. Robert scoffed. Unbelievable. They let anyone clog up the priority lane these days. David reached the scanner. The gate agent, a tired woman named Linda, looked at him over her spectacles. Her eyes darted from his hoodie to his face, then down to the digital boarding pass on his phone. She frowned. Passport, she said, her tone clipped. David handed it over. She opened it, scanned it, and paused. The screen on her console beeped green, a distinct double-tone chime that usually signaled a VIP status. She blinked, looking closer at the screen. The code CL0001 flashed in the corner of her monitor. It was a clearance code she had never seen before. She looked up at David, confused. Mr. Holloway. That's me, David said, his voice raspy from exhaustion. I see here you're in 1A. She hesitated. Is this a staff travel ticket? Non-revenue? Full fare, David said softly. Paid cash. Linda looked suspicious. People dressed like David didn't pay 14 haratas for a one-way ticket to London. They usually used miles, or they were employees catching a lucky break. But the machine said green. Fine, she sighed, handing the passport back without making eye contact. Enjoy your flight. David walked down the jet bridge, the cool, damp air of the tunnel hitting his face. He felt the weight of the phone in his pocket. He hadn't told anyone at the airline he was coming. The board of directors knew, but the operational staff, they had no clue the new boss was walking onto the plane. He wanted to see how the company was running from the ground level. He wanted to see what he had just bought. He stepped onto the aircraft. Standing at the door was the cabin service director. Her name tag read Patricia. She was tall with blonde hair, pulled back so tight it looked painful, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was greeting the passenger, ahead of David, one of the men in suits with effusive warmth. Welcome back, Mr. Sterling. Oh, wait, no, Sterling. Mr. Lancaster. Patricia beamed, taking his coat. So good to see you again. Champagne is already at your seat. Thank you, Patricia, Mr. Lancaster said, gliding past. Then David stepped into the doorway. Patricia's smile vanished instantly. It was like a light switch had been flicked off. She looked David up and down, her eyes lingering on the scuff mark on his left sneaker. She didn't offer to take his coat. She didn't say welcome. Boarding pass, she demanded, holding out her hand. David pulled his phone back out. I'm in 1A. Patricia let out a short, sharp breath through her nose, a sound of pure annoyance. She snatched the phone from his hand, scrolled through the screen, and checked the date, the flight number, and the name. She seemed disappointed that everything matched. Turn right, she said, pointing down the aisle. First aisle is for you. Try not to block the flow for the other first-class passengers. Thanks, David said, taking his phone back. He walked into the first-class cabin. It was an older layout, not yet updated to the suites, but still luxurious. Large leather armchairs, wood grain finishings. Seat 1A was the prime spot. David tossed his backpack into the overhead bin and settled into the seat. He closed his eyes, exhaling a long breath. Finally. He heard a huffing sound. Excuse me. David opened one eye. It was Robert Harrington, the man from the line. He was standing in the aisle holding a garment bag, looking down at David with a mixture of confusion and disgust. You're in 1A? Robert asked. I am, David replied. That's usually my seat, Robert muttered, pushing past him to get to seat 1B. Company must be giving away upgrades to anyone with a credit card application these days. David ignored him. He just wanted water. His throat was parched. Patricia entered the cabin. She had a silver tray with crystal flutes of champagne and warm nuts. She moved gracefully to seat 1K, then 1F, serving the other passengers. She came to row 1. She turned to Robert Harrington. Mr. Harrington, so wonderful to have you with us. The usual champagne and a warm towel. Please, Patricia. Robert smiled. And keep it coming. Long week. Of course. She placed the flute on his linen napkin. Then she turned to face David. The tray still held 3 glasses of champagne. David sat up slightly, offering a polite smile. Could I just get a water, please? David asked. Sparkling if you have it. Patricia looked at him. She didn't smile. She didn't check her cart. We are currently serving pre-departure beverages for our premium passengers, she said, her voice dripping with condensation. I need to clear the cabin for takeoff. I'll see if we have water available once we are in the air. David frowned. But you have drinks right there. These are allocated. She lied smoothly. She turned her back on him and walked away toward the galley. David sat there stunned. He looked at Robert. Robert took a sip of his champagne, smirked, and opened his Financial Times. "Don't take it personally, kid," Robert said. "There's a pecking order. You just learned you're at the bottom." David reached into his pocket and touched his phone. He opened his secure messaging app. He typed a single message to Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of the board for Regal Atlantic. Message: "I'm on flight 902, seat 1A. Interesting atmosphere." He didn't hit send yet. He decided to wait. He decided to give Patricia one more chance. The plane pushed back from the gate 20 minutes late. The captain, a man named Captain Roger Miller, came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We apologize for the slight delay. We were just waiting on some last-minute luggage manifests. Flight time to London is 7 hours and 40 minutes. Sit back, relax, and let our world-class crew take care of you." David looked out the window as the massive engines spooled up. World-class crew, he thought. We'll see. Once the seatbelt sign chimed off the activity in the first class, cabin resumed. The smell of heated brioche and roasted rosemary filled the air. Patricia and a younger flight attendant, Sarah, began the dinner service. Sarah seemed nervous. She was glancing at David sympathetically, but every time she moved toward him, Patricia would intercept her and whisper something sharp, redirecting her to the other aisle. David waited 30 minutes. No water, no menu, no warm towel. Everyone else was eating. Robert Harrington was tucking into a lobster appetizer. David pressed the call button. One solitary ding echoed in the quiet cabin. He waited. 5 minutes passed. He pressed it again. Ding. Patricia tore open the curtain from the galley. She didn't walk to his seat. She stood at the front of the aisle and glared. She marched over, leaning down so her face was inches from his. "Sir," she hissed, keeping her voice low but venomous. "You are disturbing the other passengers. If you press that button again, I will have to issue you a formal warning." "I haven't been served," David said, his voice calm but hardening. "I asked for water an hour ago. I haven't received a menu. Everyone else is eating." "We are doing a service flow," Patricia said. "We serve based on status priority. You are a—" She paused, glancing at her manifest where she had clearly misread or assumed his code meant standby or employee upgrade. "You are on a promotional fare. You get served last, if there is food left." "Promotional fare." David laughed, a dry, incredulous sound. "I paid full fare, and even if I didn't, I'm in first class. The service standard is the same." "Don't tell me my job," Patricia snapped. "I have been flying for 20 years. I know a non-rev passenger when I see one." "Look at you." She gestured to his hoodie. "You're lucky to be up here at all. Now lower your voice, or I will have the captain come out here." "Patricia, is there a problem?" Robert asked, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Is he bothering you?" "He's being aggressive, Mr. Harrington," Patricia said, playing the victim instantly. "Demanding service out of turn." "Unbelievable," Robert muttered. "Stewardess, can you move him? I can't enjoy my meal with this racket next to me." Patricia looked at David with a triumphant sneer. "I can't move him, the flight is full, but I can ensure he doesn't disturb you further." She turned back to David. "I'm cutting you off. No alcohol service for you. And if I hear one more peep, you will be met by police in London. Do you understand?" David stared at her. The anger was rising hot and tight in his chest, but he forced it down. This was deeper than bad service. This was systemic rot. This was a culture of arrogance that started from the top and bled down to the galleys. "I understand perfectly, Patricia," David said. "I won't say another word." "Good." She spun on her heel and marched away. David watched her go. He watched Sarah, the junior flight attendant, look at him with wide, fearful eyes before ducking back into the galley. David pulled out his laptop. He connected to the onboard Wi-Fi. It was slow, costing $29.999, but it worked. He logged into the secure corporate server of Sentient Systems. He accessed the acquisition files. He pulled up the HR directory for Regal Atlantic Airways. He typed in Patricia G. Result, Patricia Gantry Chief Purser, Employee ID RA999201, Base Chicago. He typed in Roger M. Result, Roger Miller, Senior Captain, Employee ID RA4402. David opened his email client. He drafted a new email to Arthur Pendleton, Chairman Gerald Fitz, VP of Operations, Linda O'Neill, Head of HR. Subject immediate action. Required. Flight 902. He paused. He needed more. He needed undeniable proof. He couldn't just fire them on hearsay. The unions would have a field day. He needed them to dig their own grave so deep that no lawyer could pull them out. He needed to push the button one more time. David waited until the cabin lights were dimmed. He stood up to go to the lavatory. As he walked toward the front, Patricia was sitting in the jump seat, scrolling through her phone, a violation of safety protocols while on duty, but minor compared to what was coming. The forward lavatory is for first-class passengers only, she said, without looking up. I am a first-class passenger, David said. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. I told you to sit down. I need to use the restroom, Patricia. That is a basic human right. Go to the back. She pointed to the economy curtain 50 feet away through the business cabin. Use the one in coach. This one is out of order. The sign on the door clearly said vacant. There was no out of order sticker. The sign says vacant, David said, reaching for the handle. Patricia jumped up, physically blocking his path. She placed a hand on his chest and shoved him back. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was physical contact. I said, she raised her voice, waking up half the cabin, get back to your seat. You are compromising the safety of this flight deck. The cockpit door opened. Captain Miller stepped out. He was a silver-haired man with a face like a bulldog. He saw Patricia standing defensively, and David standing in the aisle. What is going on here? Captain Miller barked. Captain? Patricia cried out, her voice trembling with fake fear. This passenger, Mr. Holloway, he's been aggressive. He tried to force his way into the flight deck. He shoved me. David's jaw dropped. That is a lie. I was trying to use the restroom. Captain Miller didn't look at David. He looked at his chief purser. Did he touch you? Yes. Patricia lied. He grabbed my arm. Robert Harrington chimed in from seat 1B. I saw it. He was lunging at her. Captain Miller turned to David. His face was red. That's a federal offense, son. Assaulting a crew member, attempting to breach the cockpit. I did neither of those things, David said, holding his hands up. There are cameras. There are witnesses. I'm the witness, Miller spat, and I'm the captain. You're done. Miller grabbed a pair of zip-tie restraints from the emergency locker. Turn around, hands behind your back. You have got to be kidding me, David said. Captain, I advise you to check the passenger manifest one more time. Look at the CL code. I don't care about your frequent flyer miles, Miller shouted. Turn around now. David realized there was no talking his way out of this. He turned around. He felt the plastic zip ties bite into his wrists. Patricia, Miller said, breathing heavily. Move him to the rear jump seat. Strap him in. He doesn't move until we land. I'm radioing Heathrow Police to meet us at the gate. Patricia grabbed David's arm, digging her nails in. With pleasure, Captain. As she marched him through the first-class cabin, past the business-class cabin, and into the staring eyes of economy, David didn't look down. He held his head high, because as he walked, he realized something. His phone was still in his back pocket. and his hands, though bound, could still reach it if he sat at the right angle. They threw him into the rear galley jump seat next to the toilets. A young male flight attendant looked at him with pity, but said nothing. Patricia tightened the seatbelt across David's chest so hard it knocked the wind out of him. "Enjoy the view, garbage," she whispered. She marched back to the front. David waited until she was gone. He shifted his hips. He maneuvered his bound hands to his back pocket. It was painful contorting his shoulders, but he got the phone out. He couldn't type well, but he could use voice to text if he whispered, or he could hit send on the draft he had already started. But he decided to do something better. He unlocked the phone with his Face ID. He navigated to the Regal Atlantic internal ownership app, the God Mode app that IT had installed on his phone just that morning for the acquisition transfer. He saw the flight status RA 902. Mid-Atlantic. Captain R. Miller. There was a button that said, Initiate Urgent Comms. Board-level priority. David pressed it. 4,000 miles away, inside the glass-walled command center of Regal Atlantic's Global Operations HQ in London, a red light began to pulse on the main dashboard. It wasn't a mechanical failure warning. It wasn't a weather alert. It was a Priority Zero executive alert. Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of Regal Atlantic, was just pouring himself a scotch in his corner office, celebrating the buyout. The deal with Sentient Systems had saved the airline from bankruptcy. David Holloway was a visionary. Arthur knew the young tech mogul was unconventional. He dressed like a skater and thought like a chess grandmaster, but he was brilliant. Arthur's desk phone rang. It was the red line, the one that never rang. He picked it up. Pendleton. "Sir, it's operations," a frantic voice said. "We have a code black, triggered from Flight 902. Arthur frowned. "Code black, is it a hijacking?" "No, sir. It's an executive distress signal. It's coming from the owner's app. The ID matches David Holloway." Arthur dropped his glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, scotch splashing onto his shoes. "Holloway, he's on 902. "Yes, sir. He's logged into the mainframe from the aircraft. We just got a text packet from his device. It's a voice-to-text transcript." "Read it to me," Arthur commanded, his heart hammering against his ribs. The operations officer hesitated. "Sir, it reads, Captain Miller and Purser Gantry have assaulted me. I am currently zip-tied in the rear galley jump seat. False accusations of cockpit breach. Witnesses intimidated. If I am not released in 10 minutes, I am dissolving the board and liquidating the assets. You have 5 minutes to reach the cockpit." Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. He knew David Holloway. David wasn't a drama queen. If he said he was zip-tied, he was zip-tied. The new owner of the company, the man who literally held the fate of 40,000 employees in his hands, was currently being treated like a terrorist by Arthur's own staff. "Get me the cockpit of Flight 902, Arthur screamed into the phone. "Now override everything." "We're trying, sir. The captain isn't answering the SATCOM. He's set the comms to Do Not Disturb mode." "Override it," Arthur roared. "Wake him up if you have to flash the cabin lights. SOS do it. Get that pilot on the phone, or I will fly a fighter jet out there myself." Back on Flight 902. The atmosphere in the cockpit was calm. Captain Roger Miller was feeling good. He had handled a security threat. He had protected his crew. He leaned back, watching the clouds drift by at 38,000 feet. "That guy was a piece of work, huh?" the first officer, a younger man named Tim, said nervously. "You think he really shoved Patricia?" "Doesn't matter what I think, Tim," Miller said, taking a sip of coffee. "Patricia said he did, and in the air my word is law. Besides, did you see how he was dressed, hoodlum? Probably on drugs. We'll let the bobbies in London sort him out. I'll write up the report, we'll get a commendation for vigilance." Suddenly the cockpit was filled with a piercing, oscillating alarm. It was the Selcal selective calling system, but it was louder than usual. A message flashed on the flight management computer screens. "Company urgent. Acknowledge immediately." Miller frowned. What now? Probably just a routing change for weather. He reached out and pressed the button to accept the call. He put on his headset. "Flight 902, Captain Miller, speakings." "Go ahead." "Miller." The voice on the other end wasn't dispatch. It was a roar that sounded like God himself was angry. It was Arthur Pendleton. Miller froze. He recognized the chairman's voice instantly. He had only heard it once before at a company gala 5 years ago. "Mr. Pendleton," Miller stammered. "Sir, is everything all right?" "Is everything all right?" Arthur's voice was trembling with rage. "You tell me, Miller. Where is the passenger from seat 1A? Miller blinked. How did the chairman know about the incident already? "So we had a security situation. An unruly passenger in 1A. He assaulted the chief purser and attempted to breach the flight deck. I've neutralized the threat. He's restrained in the rear." There was a silence on the line, so cold it could have frozen the Atlantic Ocean below them. "Neutralize the threat," Arthur repeated slowly. "Miller, listen to me very carefully. The man you have zip-tied in the back of your plane is David Holloway." I don't know who that is, sir," Miller said, confusion creeping in. "David Holloway is the CEO of Sentient Systems." Arthur screamed, his voice cracking. "As of 4 a.m. this morning, he owns 51% of Regal Atlantic Airways. He is your boss. He is my boss. He owns the plane you are flying. He owns the shirt on your back. You have assaulted the owner of the airline." Miller's stomach dropped out of his body. The blood rushed from his head, leaving him dizzy. He looked at the first officer, his face turning grey. "Sir." "Surely there's a mistake," Miller whispered. He was wearing a hoodie. He looked like... He is a billionaire tech mogul, you imbecile. He practically invented the encryption software we use for our tickets. Now you listen to me. You're going to go back there right now. You're going to cut those ties. You are going to apologize. And you are going to pray. Pray to whatever deity you believe in, that he doesn't sue this company into oblivion and take your pension as a souvenir. Do it now." The line went dead. Miller sat there, the headset slipping off his ear. His hands were shaking so violently he knocked his coffee over. "Captain," Tim asked, alarmed. "Captain, what is it? Are we crashing?" Miller looked at Tim with hollow eyes. "Worse. I just arrested the owner of the airline." Patricia Gantry was in the forward galley, recounting the story to the business-class flight attendants. She was embellishing, adding details about how David had clawed at her and screamed profanities. "It was terrifying," she said, dramatically pressing a hand to her chest. "But you know me. I don't take nonsense. I told Captain Miller, it's him or me. Thank God Roger is a strong leader." Suddenly the cockpit door flew open. Patricia turned, expecting a smile or a thumbs up from the captain. Instead, she saw a ghost. Captain Miller stumbled out of the cockpit. He was pale, sweating profusely, and his eyes were wide with terror. He was holding a pair of heavy-duty trauma shears in his trembling hand. "Captain," Patricia asked, her smile faltering. "What's wrong? Did he break loose?" Miller didn't answer her. He walked right past her, moving with a frantic, jerky speed. He pushed through the curtain into first class. "Captain," Patricia hissed, chasing after him. "You can't go through the cabin looking like that. You're scaring the passengers." Miller ignored her. He power-walked down the aisle of first class. Robert Harrington, in seat 1B, looked up from his wine. "Everything under control, Captain?" Harrington asked smugly. "Shut up!" Miller snapped. He didn't even look at him. Harrington's jaw dropped. Miller kept going, storming through business class, past the confused faces of the travelers. Patricia jogged to keep up her high heels, clicking frantically. "Roger, talk to me," she whispered urgently. "Where are we going?" "To the back," Miller croaked, his voice dry. "We have to release him." "Release him?" Patricia grabbed Miller's arm, stopping him in the middle of the business cabin. "Are you insane? He's dangerous. He assaulted me." Miller spun around, grabbing Patricia by the shoulders. His grip was hard, desperate. Passengers gasped. "Did he?" Miller stared into her eyes. "Did he really assault you, Patricia? Or did you just not like his hoodie? I... Patricia stammered, shocked by the intensity in his eyes. "He was aggressive. He didn't belong in first. He owns the airline. Patricia." Miller shouted, no longer caring who heard him. The cabin went silent. A pin drop could have been heard in the business class section. Patricia froze. "What?" "The man in the back." Miller whispered, his voice shaking. "Is David Holloway. He bought the company this morning. We just zip-tied the man who signs our paychecks." Patricia's face crumbled. The arrogance, the smugness, the self-righteous fury, it all evaporated in a split second, replaced by a pure, unadulterated horror. Her knees buckled and she had to grab a seat back to stay upright. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." "Come on," Miller said, turning back toward the rear of the plane. "We have to fix this." They ran the rest of the way. They burst through the curtain into the rear galley. David was sitting exactly where they had left him. His legs were cramped, his wrists were chafed and bleeding slightly from the tight plastic ties. He was looking out the small porthole window at the endless blue sky. He turned his head slowly as they burst in. His expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was the cold, calculating look of a predator watching wounded prey. "Captain," David said calmly, "to what do I owe the pleasure did you decide to waterboard me next?" Miller fell to his knees. Literally, he dropped to his knees on the galley floor, the shears in his hand. "Mr. Holloway," Miller gasped. "Sir, I had no idea. Please, I am so sorry." Miller reached out with shaking hands to cut the zip ties. David pulled his hands away. "Don't touch me." Miller froze. "Sir, please, let me release you." "No," David said. "You put these on because you claimed I was a threat. If you cut them now, you're admitting you lied. You're admitting there was no threat. Are you admitting that Captain—" "Yes," Miller cried. "Yes, I admit it. I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake." David looked at Patricia. She was standing behind the captain, trembling tears streaming down her face, tears of fear, not remorse. "And you, Patricia?" David asked. "Did I assault you? Did I grab your arm?" "No," Patricia sobbed. "No, you didn't. I exaggerated. I was stressed. Please, Mr. Holloway, I have 2 kids in college. Please don't fire me." "Exaggerated," David repeated. "You framed me for a federal crime because you didn't like my sneakers." "I'm sorry," she wailed. David stared at them for a long moment. The silence was heavy. "Cut them," David said finally. Miller scrambled forward and snipped the plastic ties. David rubbed his wrists, wincing at the red welts. He stood up, stretching his stiff back. He towered over the kneeling captain. "Stand up, Captain Miller," David commanded. "You look pathetic." Miller scrambled to his feet. "Sir, can I get you anything? We can clear the entire first-class cabin. I'll make everyone move to coach. You can have the whole cabin to yourself." "I don't want the cabin," David said, brushing off his hoodie. "I want my seat. Seat 1A, the one I paid for." "Of course," Patricia said, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself, trying to salvage some dignity. "I'll escort you back right now. I'll get you the finest champagne. I have a bottle of Dom Perignon in the reserve locker." "You won't be serving me anything, Patricia," David said. He looked past her to the young flight attendant, the one who had looked at him with pity earlier. The guy was standing in the corner, holding a pot of coffee, looking terrified. "What's your name?" David asked him. "J. Jason, sir," the young man stammered, and the young woman in first class, the one who tried to help me before Patricia stopped her. "That's Sarah, sir." "Right," David nodded. He pulled his phone out. "Jason, go get Sarah. Tell her to meet me in the first-class galley immediately." "Yes, sir." Jason ran off. David turned back to Miller and Patricia. "You two," David said, his voice dropping an octave. "You are relieved of duty." Miller's eyes widened. "Sir, we're mid-flight. I'm the pilot in command. FAA regulations." "I know the regulations," David interrupted. "You will remain in the cockpit to fly the plane because I don't want to die today. But you are stripped of your authority over the cabin. You speak only to ATC. You do not address the passengers. You do not leave that flight deck until we touch the ground." "Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Miller whispered. "And you?" David looked at Patricia. "You are done working. You will not serve a single drink. You will not talk to a single passenger. You will sit in this jump seat right here next to the toilet where you put me, and you will stay here for the next 6 hours. Patricia gasped. "So that's humiliating. The passengers will see." "That's the point," David said. "Sit. Down." Patricia looked at him, then at the jump seat. Slowly shaking, she sat down and buckled the strap. "Captain, get back to the front," David ordered, "and send the first officer out to verify the cabin counts. I don't trust your eyes anymore." Miller fled. David straightened his hoodie. He walked out of the galley, leaving the sobbing chief purser strapped next to the lavatory. He began the long walk back to the front of the plane. As David walked through the economy cabin, a ripple of whispers followed him. People had seen him being marched back like a criminal. Now he was walking forward like a king. He didn't look left or right. He reached the first-class curtain. Sarah was waiting there, looking nervous. Jason was standing behind her. "Mr. Holloway?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Jason said you asked for me." "I did," David said. He looked at her name tag. "Sarah Jenkins." "Sarah, how long have you been flying?" 3 years, sir." "Do you know the protocols for a lead flight attendant?" "Yes, sir. I'm trained, but I've never held the position." "You do now," David said. "Patricia Gantry has been relieved of duty for gross misconduct. As of this moment, you are the acting chief purser of this flight. You run the cabin. Jason is your second." Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the empty space where Patricia usually stood, barking orders. Me. You, David said warmly. "You were the only one who tried to treat me like a human being earlier. That counts for a lot. Now, do you think you can handle this service? I'm quite thirsty." Sarah straightened her posture. A spark of determination lit up her eyes. "Yes, sir. I can. Absolutely." "Good. I'll take that sparkling water now." David walked into the first-class cabin. The mood in the cabin had shifted. The passengers had sensed the chaos. They had seen the captain running. They saw the lack of service. David walked to seat 1A. Robert Harrington was still in seat 1B. He saw David return. He saw that David was no longer restrained. He saw the way Sarah was rushing to get a fresh tablecloth for David's tray table. Harrington, being the type of man who doubled down when confused, decided to speak up. So, Harrington sneered, though his voice was a bit unsure. "They let you loose. I hope you learned your lesson, son. You can't just act like an animal and expect—" David turned to him. He didn't yell. He didn't get angry. He just leaned in, close, invading Harrington's personal space. "Mr. Harrington," David said softly. "My name is David Holloway. I own Sentient Systems, and as of this morning, I own this airline. I own this seat. I own the champagne you're drinking. I own the fork in your hand." Harrington froze his fork halfway to his mouth. "What? I bought the airline," David said simply. "And I'm currently auditing the passenger list. I see you're a Diamond Medallion member." Yes, I am." Harrington stammered his face, turning a sickly shade of beige. "I've flown Regal for 20 years. I'm a loyal customer." "Loyalty is a two-way street," David said. "And I don't like the way you treat my other passengers, or my crew, or me." David turned to Sarah, who had returned with a silver tray, a crystal glass, and a bottle of chilled San Pellegrino. "Sarah," David said. "Yes, Mr. Holloway." "Mr. Harrington here seems to be finished with his service. Please clear his table." "But I haven't finished my lobster," Harrington protested. "You're finished?" David said, his eyes hard. "Sarah, clear his table. And Mr. Harrington, I'm revoking your status, effective immediately. When you land in London, you can find another airline for your return trip. You're banned from Regal Atlantic for life." "You can't do that," Harrington spluttered, standing up. "I'll sue. Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," David said, opening his laptop. "You're the guy who is about to be escorted off my plane by police. If you say one more word, sit down." Harrington looked at David. He looked at the other passengers who were now staring at him with a mixture of shock and amusement. He looked at Sarah, who was waiting expectantly for his tray. Harrington sat down. He slumped into his seat, defeated. "Thank you, Sarah," David said, taking the water. "This is delicious." The rest of the flight was a masterclass in tension. David didn't sleep. He spent the next 6 hours working. He called Sarah over every 20 minutes, asking for details on the crew schedules, the catering contracts, the morale of the staff. He treated her like a consultant, not a servant. He learned that Patricia had been stealing from the duty-free cart for years. He learned that Captain Miller was known for skipping pre-flight safety briefings. He learned that the crew was underpaid and overworked, while the executives took massive bonuses. He built a file. A massive, damning dossier of everything that was wrong with Regal Atlantic, compiled at 38,000 feet. Meanwhile, in the back of the plane, Patricia Gantry sat next to the toilet. Every time a passenger from economy walked by to use the restroom, they looked at her. "Excuse me, miss," a passenger asked. "Can I get a Coke?" "I can't serve you," Patricia whispered, staring at the floor. "Why not? Aren't you working?" "No," Patricia said, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I'm not." The descent into London. Heathrow was turbulent. The grey soup of the British weather buffeted the wings of Flight 902, shaking the cabin. For most passengers, it was just typical turbulence. For Captain Roger Miller, every vibration felt like the airline itself, shuddering apart under his feet. Miller hadn't said a word to air traffic control other than the necessary vectors. He was flying manually, his knuckles white on the yoke. He was trying to delay the inevitable. He considered for a brief moment, faking a mechanical issue and diverting to Manchester, just to buy himself another hour. But he knew it was futile. David Holloway was in 1A, and David Holloway controlled the sky. In the cabin, the atmosphere was electric. The rumour mill had done its work. By the time the fasten seatbelt sign chimed for landing, nearly every passenger on the plane knew the truth. The billionaire owner was on board, the captain was in trouble, and the rude stewardess was in time out by the toilets. David packed his laptop away. He looked fresh, energized by the adrenaline of the work he had just done. He turned to Sarah, who was securing the cabin for landing. "Sarah," he said quietly. "Yes, Mr. Holloway." When we hit the gate, I want you to open the door. Not the gate agent. You. I want you to be the face of this airline when the door opens. I understand, sir. And tell Jason to stand guard at the rear. Do not let Patricia up until the police are on board. Sarah nodded her face, pale but determined. The wheels touched down with a heavy thud. Reverse thrusters roared. As the plane slowed and turned off the runway, the usual flight deck announcement was noticeably absent. Captain Miller didn't say, "Welcome to London." He didn't check the temperature. There was just dead silence over the PA system. David unbuckled his seatbelt the moment the light went off. He stood up and walked to the front galley, grabbing the PA handset. He pressed the button. His voice echoed through the entire aircraft. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Holloway speaking from seat 1A. I am the new owner of Regal Atlantic Airways. I want to personally apologize for the unusual service dynamic on today's flight. We experienced some personnel issues that were contrary to the values of this company." He paused, looking at Robert Harrington, who was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. "We are taxiing to gate 42. You will notice emergency vehicles and police cars outside. Please do not be alarmed. They are not here for you. They are here to help us take out the trash. Thank you for flying Regal Atlantic. We are about to make some changes." The plane taxied to the gate. Through the rain-streaked windows, passengers could see flashing blue lights reflecting off the wet tarmac. 3 police cruisers and 2 black executive SUVs were waiting right at the jet bridge stairs. The aircraft came to a halt. The engines whined down. Sarah Jenkins took a deep breath. She disarmed the door. She looked back at David. He nodded. She pushed the lever up and swung the heavy door open. Standing on the jet bridge wasn't just a gate agent. It was Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of the board who had flown in from the London office by helicopter to meet the plane. Beside him were 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police and a woman in a sharp blazer, Victoria Banks, the UK head of human resources. Arthur looked past Sarah, spotting David. He looked relieved, terrified, and furious all at once. "David," Arthur said, stepping onto the plane. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Arthur," David said, stepping forward. "But we have work to do." "We're ready," Arthur said, gesturing to the HR director and the police. "The paperwork is already printed." "Good," David said. "Bring them out." The disembarkation process was halted. David ordered the bridge to remain closed to passengers for 5 minutes. He wanted this done before the public walked off, but he wanted the crew to witness it. "Captain Miller," David shouted toward the cockpit door. "Front and center." Now, the cockpit door opened slowly. Captain Roger Miller emerged. He had removed his hat. He looked 10 years older than he had in Chicago. He walked into the galley, his shoulders slumped. "Patricia," David called over the interphone. "Jason, bring her up." A minute later, Patricia Gantry was marched up the aisle by Jason. She was no longer crying. She looked haggard, her makeup smeared, her uniform rumpled. She saw the police standing in the doorway and stopped dead in her tracks. "Is this necessary?" Patricia whispered, her voice trembling. "Police for a service dispute." "It's not a service dispute. Patricia." Victoria Banks, HR, stepped in, holding a clipboard. "It's assault. It's filing a false report to the FAA. It's endangering the safety of a flight by lying to the captain. And," she tapped the clipboard, "according to Mr. Holloway's audit of the duty-free cart during the flight, it's also theft. You're short $400 in inventory." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. David stepped forward. The space in the galley was tight, filled with the tension of careers ending. "Roger Miller," David said, his voice cold and formal. "You violated your oath as a captain. You acted on bias instead of evidence. You allowed a paying passenger to be restrained without cause because you were too arrogant to check a manifest. You are fired. effective immediately. You will be stripped of your rank, and I will personally recommend to the Civil Aviation Authority that your license be permanently revoked." Miller looked at the floor. I have a pension." "You had a pension," Arthur Pendleton corrected him. "There is a clause in your contract regarding gross negligence and repute damage. You just triggered it. You leave with nothing." Miller let out a sob. The police officers stepped forward. "Captain, we need you to come with us for a statement regarding the unlawful imprisonment of a passenger." They took Miller by the arms and led him off the plane. David turned to Patricia. "Patricia," David said, "you treated people like dirt because you thought you were untouchable. You thought a hoodie meant nobody. You forgot the most basic rule of your job. You serve people. All people." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "You're not sorry you did it," David said. "You're sorry you did it to me. You are terminated, and you are banned from flying on this airline, even as a passenger for life. Get off my plane." Patricia looked at her colleagues. Sarah looked away. Jason looked away. No one came to her defense. She lowered her head and walked off the plane, meeting the second pair of police officers on the jet bridge. Finally, David turned to the cabin. He looked at Seat 1B. "Mr. Harrington," David called out. Robert Harrington stood up. He looked small. "You can leave on your own accord," David said. "But your return ticket is cancelled, and your miles are gone. Don't let me see you on a Regal flight again." Harrington grabbed his bag and scurried off the plane without a word, head down, avoiding the gaze of the other passengers. The cabin was silent. The trash had been taken out. David turned to Sarah and Jason. They were standing by the galley wall looking wide-eyed. "Victoria," David said to the HR director. "Do you have the tablets?" "Yes, Mr. Holloway." She handed David 2 digital devices. David handed one to Sarah and one to Jason. "Sarah Jenkins," David said. "You stepped up when leadership failed. You showed empathy. You showed courage. As of today, I am promoting you to Director of In-Flight Customer Experience. You are coming off the line. I want you in corporate. I want you to teach every single crew member how to treat people the way you treated me today. Your salary is tripled starting now." Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Mr. Holloway, thank you. And Jason." David turned to the young man. "You followed orders, but you also showed compassion. You are promoted to senior purser. You run the cabins now. Make sure no one like Patricia ever works under you." "I will, sir. I promise," Jason beamed. David smiled. The exhaustion finally hit him. He rubbed his eyes. "All right," David said to Arthur. "Let's get the passengers off. I need a shower and a very long nap." Arthur clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome to London, David. Quite an entrance." "I didn't want an entrance, Arthur," David said, slinging his backpack over his shoulder, the same backpack Patricia had sneered at. "I just wanted a glass of water." He walked off the plane, down the jet bridge, and into the terminal. He was still wearing the hoodie. He was still wearing the scuffed sneakers. But as he walked through the airport, surrounded by his executive team, nobody dared to question if he belonged. He was the boss, and he had just cleared the runway. And that is the story of how one arrogant mistake cost a captain his wings, a stewardess her career, and a rude passenger his dignity. It's a brutal reminder that character isn't defined by the clothes you wear or the seat you sit in. It's defined by how you treat people when you think no one of importance is watching. Patricia and Captain Miller thought they were dealing with a nobody. They didn't realize that in the world of business, the quietest person in the room is often the one holding all the cards. What would you have done if you were in David's shoes? Would you have fired them, or would you have given them a second chance? And have you ever been judged by your appearance in a public place? Let me know your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, fly safe, be kind, and remember, you never know who you're talking to.